Mulwen guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is day 4 of Vlogmas. We'll be talking about the Foxy Five today. Please make sure to like the video, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. The Foxy Five is a millennial girlfriend-esque web series shot in Cape Town. The web series only uploaded episodes for one season, with about 6 episodes in total, all of which are available on YouTube. The Foxy Five was a show about 5 friends who navigate interpersonal relationships within the context of intersectionality. The conversations they had in the show were important and educational, and are still indispensable today. The show was beautifully shot and well written. 5 women discussing issues that women deal with in today's society. Issues like freedom of movement, self-expression, colorism, identity, sexual fluidity, gender identity, and racism, just to name a few. The women in the show all represent a different archetype that I think we can all relate to in varying degrees. The ladies tackled issues facing women along with a very interesting revolving door of supporting cast, who all bring their experiences, opinions, and voices to the dialogue. It was the type of content we needed to conversate, to learn, to explore, and to expand our worldview. In an interview done, Jabu, the creator of the show, is quoted as saying, "Right now, South African women are leading the revolution and are at the forefront of bringing change. Plus, those women also have to make sure that the movement is intersectional and call out the misogynistic and patriarchal bullshit that is evident in the movement. African women also draw so much power and strength from their ancestors and pre-colonial history that when it comes to decolonizing feminism, we need to play a huge role." I first watched the show back when I got on YouTube and I was looking for local content to watch. I liked it back then because they talked about social issues in a concise and entertaining way. Off the top of my head, the episode that stood out the most for me was episode 4, the episode where they talked about trans identity. Back then, that was the first time I felt like I was having a conversation with someone from the trans community. And please don't ask me how old I was. It was eye-opening. That's not to say I was as dense as a brick back then, but I never thought about the men and women in the trans community and how just existing and being yourself was at times challenging, even when you're with your friends. The reason why I liked the show was because they didn't force feed you the ideologies. Rather, they introduced ideas to you and gave you the freedom to explore the topic for yourself. That is, of course, if you're open and willing to do the research. At the time, I was not fully marinated in the terms, ideologies, and concepts of intersectionality. So, for me, it felt like I was hanging out with my older sister and her friends. I understood some of what they were saying, but the weight that the topics carried were heavier than my hands could hold. Now, going back to the web series again in 2019, after I have formed my own opinions on the topics, I find myself disagreeing with them on a few points. But that's the beauty of growth, isn't it? I would love to hear their take on the current social movements, such as the Me Too movement, Men Are Trash, Am I Next, Bring Back the Land, and the blessings that have increasingly sprouted out in recent years. Another factor that made me love the show was the theme, the 70s theme. The graphics were beautifully done. Almost everything in the show was an ode to the 70s. The clothing, the opening credits, and some of the ideologies that were the strongest in the 70s. And some of the ideologies. The Foxy Five all had natural hairstyles, braids, afro, locks, and twists. Aesthetically, the hair and makeup was on brand. The women represented movements that were popularized in the 70s. Their worldviews were under the umbrella of feminism, but more specifically intersectionality, like the ideologies held by Femme and Black Beauty. Femme was a sexual revolutionist. The sexual revolution, also known as a time of sexual liberation, was a social movement that challenged traditional codes of behavior related to sexuality and interpersonal relationships. Sexual liberation included the increased acceptance of sex outside of traditional heterosexual, monogamous relationships, primarily marriage, the normalization of contraception and the pill, public nudity, pornography, premarital sex, homosexuality, masturbation, alternative forms of sexuality, and the legalization of the abortion pill all followed. Hence, Femme was being compared to Amber Rose. Black Beauty was the Afrocentrist. Afrocentrists sought to challenge concepts such as white privilege, colorblind perspectives, and race-neutral teachings. She also represented Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism is a worldwide movement that aims to encourage and strengthen bonds of solidarity between all indigenous and diasporan ethnic groups of African descent. Pan-Africanist intellectual, cultural, and political movements tend to view all Africans and descendants of Africans as belonging to a single race and sharing cultural unity. Black separatism is also an ideology Black Beauty represented. Black separatism is a subcategory of Black nationalism, stemming from the idea of racial solidarity, and it also implies that Blacks should organize themselves on the basis of their common experience of oppression as a result of their race, culture, and African heritage. Each episode is titled after one of the characters in the story, which indicated to us, the viewer, who the episode will be focused around, and that we would be getting more acquainted with their socio-political agenda. The first episode establishes and clearly defines the central characters and their motivations. This is a group of assertive women who stand by their political views and respect each other's individuality. So when Unity introduces us to all the women, she gives us a short description of what archetype each lady represents. Each woman had different struggles which tied into the description of them given to us by Unity. For example, Black Beauty, who was my favorite character, was the sole guardian of her two brothers after the passing of their parents. In episode 2, we saw how she navigates her ideological identity while maintaining her relationship with her siblings and the ladies. This show really drove home the point that women are multidimensional. So let's talk about the ladies. Woman Wee was the intellectual. She was also struggling with anxiety and was on a drug called benzo. By the way, I had no idea what it was until I googled it. Women we also was seen as the sexual prude, but she had a blesser. Black Beauty was the militant Black Power Pan-Africanist who had a maternal side which was not clear until her episode came on. Femme Fatale, queen of sexual expression and sexuality, who just like me and probably you, had a lot of learning to do. Then we also had Prolly Plebs, the flower child, and to be honest, she was having identity issues. And finally, we had Unity Bond, the glue, the leader. The ladies were determined women, each with a vision, each with a plan, and each with a goal in mind. If I had to rank the episodes in order of most entertaining and informational to least, I would rank them 4, 6, 2, 5, 3, and 1. Episode 4, titled Femme in Jabu, is number 1 on the list because of the editing and the storytelling devices they use in this episode. Not only that, but this is the episode they talked about gender and sexuality with a trans person. Now mind you, till this day, I cannot remember seeing trans representation in local media. So when they had that conversation, short though it was, I was glued to the screen. A quote of one of the 5 on this topic clearly stood out to me till this day, and it is,
we wake up one day to like these predetermined genders that have been decided by these whites or this third party that we don't know. And it's like, it's wild, you know? It's like, can I be here? Can I exist?
the first time I heard this, I did not think about it much, but it did stand out to me. Now, in 2019, I have some questions and I would respectfully like to disagree with parts of her statement. Another thing about this episode that I loved is how Femme takes accountability for her actions and how she allowed the person she offended to express themselves in a safe environment without any interruptions or objections. That was beautiful. Criticism for the show relates more about the loose plot lines, lack of character development, topics that were not fully being explored, and the general lightheartedness of the writing. I personally liked it, and after rewatching it in preparation for this video, my sentiments are still the same. The women who created, worked in, and on the show did what they could with what they had. I believe that with better funding, the series would have been a phenomenon up in Mzansi, and most likely the greater continent. It's still available on YouTube, and I have linked everything related to the show in the description bar below. With that, I'd like to thank you for watching. Please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to my channel, and you can follow me on Instagram at Vaughn's Verdict. Bye bye.